Mzwandile Mbeje joins us live from the Union Buildings in Pretoria now. Mzwai, very good evening to you. It doesn't look like there's much activity happening at the Union Buildings at this stage, but of course, we're expecting things to get much busier a bit later on. But without a doubt, one of the big issues that many South Africans will be looking to is who will become the deputy president of the country.
Absolutely, Griselda. Of course, it may seem as if there's not a lot of activity outside here, but I can tell you that inside, right on top there, the activities are in full swing. Our personnel is there trying to put together the trucks, the cameras, so when the time for the president to come and announce his cabinet, everyone is ready. And of course, you've touched on a very important question of the deputy president. We saw yesterday, Griselda, the deputy president of the ANC being sworn in as the member of parliament. So that basically does pave the way for him to become, or rather to be appointed the deputy president of the country. It's interesting, Griselda, because as much as this is an expectation from many people, because that's what has been done in the past few years, but of course it's not necessarily a foregone conclusion. I think we did say this even yesterday, to say yes, the expectation is that the deputy president of the ANC will be appointed the deputy president of the country, because that's what has been happening. And of course, it will be very difficult to understand perhaps why he is left out, because other than the deputy president, almost all other positions are junior to what he's been holding. I think our bet really is that Mr. David Mabuza will be the one who will get number 2.
All right, Mzwai, a lot of people speculating at this stage that perhaps, and others calling for a more effective and leaner cabinet. How much leaner could it possibly go? Are we able to tell right now at all, by speculation, of course?
When President Ramaphosa took over last year, one of the first things that he said in the State of the Nation address was that he was going to set up a task team. And that task team was going to look specifically at the reconfiguration of the national executive. So basically looking at reducing the cabinet size, or maybe the national executive, which includes deputy ministers. I think one of the things really that will happen from 34 cabinet posts, perhaps our guess is that they may go down to around 25, and of course the issue of deputy ministers, Griselda, would also be affected, because there's also a number of deputy ministers, and in some instances you have two deputy ministers. And given the kind of the economic pressures that the country is going through, the president would want it to be seen to be acting really on the criticism that the current cabinet is bloated. So our guess, and based on what he himself has said, and we know that even the former Minister of Public Service, Ayanda Dlodlo, has been working on this. They've been saying the process was at an advanced stage to make sure that the cabinet or the executive is reduced. I think my guess would be perhaps around 25.
All right, Mzwai. Now, if there is a chop, from the politics of this entire process, it would clearly seem that President Ramaphosa would need to be seen to be chopping from both factions if that happens. If we look at the politics of his governing party, for example. Talk to us a bit about that.
The president will really have to strike a very delicate balance here, Griselda, when he announces this cabinet. He is the president, of course, is duly elected, but he was elected on the ticket of the party, and we know that his party has various competing interests, and that balance that he will really strike is to make sure that he accommodates everyone. But whilst doing that, he will make sure, as he has indicated, that there is experience, there is youthful energy, there is diversity, there is representation from across the provinces, and of course from the point of view of race. So those are all the things that he will have to look at as he announces his cabinet, because I mean, you can see the ANC is known as the broad church. So that church has so many elements. And for you to be able to really push that vehicle and to perhaps try and accommodate and appease everyone, you will have to strike a balance there. And I think when you see this cabinet, you would see a cabinet which will really be geared towards implementing what he has set out to do. In his inauguration speech, he made it clear that in a generation, so which basically means in 25 years, this country must be able to eradicate poverty. So if he wants to do that, so he will have to put people really who are able to do that. And then in the process, as well as I had said, but making sure that he balances every competing interest within his own party.
All right, Mzwa, you've already spoken about the youth balance, the gender balance, but I think one of the other close watches this evening is whether, for example, the former Public Enterprises Minister Pravin Gordhan will come back into this cabinet on the backdrop, of course, of the Public Protector's findings. That's certainly one to watch this evening, isn't it?
Absolutely, and everyone has been speaking about that, be it an analyst, be it ordinary people. So everyone has been speaking about the fact that the public protector has pronounced on this issue, and just before the president makes the announcement, I mean, everyone has been expecting Minister Pravin Gordhan to be reappointed to cabinet, particularly because he was continuing to deal with the issues of SOEs. And I think at this stage, everyone perhaps feels he is well versed with what is happening within the SOEs. But of course, there is a Chapter 9 institution that has pronounced. Well, we know that he has made it clear that he intends taking it on review. But the question now, Griselda, is does the president go ahead and appoint someone who the public protector has said must be disciplined?
All right, Mzwandile Mbeje coming to us live there from the Union Buildings in Pretoria, of course, ahead of that much anticipated announcement coming up at 8 o'clock tonight. Who's in and who's out? Francis, back to you for now.
Thanks, Griselda. Many South Africans are hoping the president will bring out some new brooms to sweep clean the past cabinet, which was tainted by corruption, by some inefficiencies. Here's what some had to say.
I think the new cabinet is going to be strong and they're going to do good things for South Africa, especially in education.
Increase our economy by making more sustainable jobs and more projects that help the community itself, and not just like in developed areas, more in undeveloped areas as well. So yeah, no, I'm just expecting a lot from the new cabinet.
Right now, like, there hasn't been any new development that we see in this country. So I think if they try to bring in new people, like such as the youth, they would bring new ideas towards building the country towards a more developed country. Because right now we're not even developed; we are still developing.
I think because Cyril Ramaphosa is our new president, he hasn't made any laws or any rules for our people yet. So I think he's doing pretty good so far.
We're still living in the past because like our current ministers as well are not really bringing up new ideas and stuff. And I feel, in my own opinion, I feel that we don't really need deputy ministers and other people as well.
I expect, like, now that President Ramaphosa has won the elections, we're expecting that crime would decrease, there'd be less corruption in the parliament itself, because we know that previously there have been a lot of corruption scenarios that have been going on and stuff. So we hope that corruption would stop, people would get more jobs.
So President Cyril Ramaphosa will announce his cabinet at 8 o'clock tonight. The SABC's public service radio stations, including Mzwandile FM, SAFM, Lesedi FM and RSG, will be carrying Ramaphosa's cabinet announcement live. SABC 2, the SABC News channel, the ones that you're watching right now, and the public broadcaster's YouTube channel will also be carrying the cabinet announcement live. So you don't have to miss that at all. All right, talking about wish lists ahead of that announcement, Cosatu has its own. Griselda.
Well, thank you very much, Francis. Absolutely. In the run-up to 8 o'clock, we'll continue to bring you rolling coverage in the build-up to that announcement at 8 o'clock. And, of course, that wish list is long. Cosatu's first Deputy President, Mike Shingange, joins me now. Mike, thanks for your time this evening. Well, we do understand that the leadership of Cosatu had been locked up in some meetings with the president today. Their phones are still off at this stage.
Yes.
Let's talk about Cosatu and the wish list. What you'd like to see announced at 8 o'clock this evening?
Well, our expectation, as we have been pronouncing over the past time now, is of that one of a leaner and more effective cabinet. Our view was that we will appreciate if the cabinet could be in the 20s, the maximum of which could be probably 27. We don't think that we should have the cabinet as about 30-something cabinet ministers. We will have wanted some departments that, in our view, their mandates that they run parallel to each other, or if not overlap to one another. For instance, the economic cluster departments that start from treasury, that's economic development, trade and industry, and a small business a department. Our view is that those could be combined so that we have one mandate that is to grow the economic of this country, not to have many people tripping over all over themselves. We would have wanted a situation where the public enterprise department, in our view, we think that it performs a task that can actually be performed by other departments. For instance, if you have got railway or you have SA for us that's transport, it's supposed to belong to the Department of Transport. If you have got the SABC, it's a department that can be run by the Minister of Communication. If you have got the ESCOM, it can belong to energy. So we don't understand why we must have a public enterprise. For instance, if you have a problem here at SABC, you have to deal with two ministers. You have to deal with the Minister of Telecommunication plus the Minister of Public Enterprise. We think that's a duplication. We don't need so. So that's, in our view, will make the state to function effectively. But of course, we want, in terms of the appointments of people who will be equal to their task.
You've already alluded to, in the past, issues of a balance that will be struck, a balance of fresh ideas, as Cosatu has put it, a balance of young people, of people who are efficient, but also, the issue that comes with this challenge or this announcement that will be made at 8 o'clock. Cosatu has already pronounced on some of the names that you do not want to see going forward. The names of Bathabile Dlamini have been brought up before because of the shenanigans that have followed her. Let's talk about some of those issues. Cosatu has long said it does not want to see in the next cabinet individuals who are still being followed by smolanyana skeletons, as they've put it.
Look, two things. The first is that we think that there are people that have been in this cabinet or in the government for about 20 to 25 years now. Our view is that they've run out of ideas in terms of how to take this country forward. They shouldn't be recycled. That's how we called it. Because we think that it's time for new, fresh ideas. And by that, at that time, we didn't mean in terms of age, but we meant the fact that if you have got a minister who have been there in 1994 or even in 2000, who have been presided over the policies that have brought this country down to where it is now in terms of the economy and the efficiency of the state, we do not see why those people must be recycled. So yes, we have called that point. But secondly, indeed, we have spent the past 2 years, in particular maybe the last year or so, people trying to clear their names, people trying to deny allegations after allegations, and the peoples in parliament defending one another. Our view is that the South Africans have run out of patience for that nonsense. Our view is that people, when they get elected now, they must get the job done. For the first 2 weeks, they must not spend their time in clearing their names. They must spend their time in making sure that they deliver service. So yes, the confidence of our people on the state, the confidence of our people on the ANC, that is the ruling party, is went down because of the character of the people that it sent as a public representative. Our view is that this ruling party has got many men and women who are capable to represent them in government, rather than to recycle those who have got indeed smolanyana skeleton. It's time that they go and deal with the skeletons there. Perhaps when they finish burning those bones of the skeleton, they can come back and join the state again. So
categorically, the likes of Bathabile Dlamini should not be in this cabinet?
Of course, we're not making that demand now. That has been, in fact, in our view, she should not have finished her term as a cabinet minister. Of course, it is up to the president now, but at least our views is no, that we don't think that by the time the fifth administration finished its term, such people should have still been in cabinet.
There's a new issue that has also arisen relating to the former Public Enterprises Minister Pravin Gordhan and the findings of the Public Protector relating to Ivan Pillai's pension. Should Pravin Gordhan make a comeback in this cabinet, given this Molanyana skeleton? Let's see if there's consistency here.
Firstly, as Cosatu, we dislike this thing of making this cabinet a Pravin Gordhan matter. The fifth administration has done its part. The sixth administration, the president must appoint the cabinet. And anybody that the president sees fit must be appointed. Our view has been consistent. We are not a friend of Pravin Gordhan. In fact, we hate that he must continuously dodge being answerable. He first dodged some 27 questions that he was supposed to answer. From where we stand, Pravin Gordhan must once and for all, like his other friends, answer to the institutions that be. It was not even a matter for us in the CEC that was just concluded today. We think that it's a by-the-way matter, and in fact, I would think a lot of people have misquoted us. All we were saying was that even there in the office of the public protector, not the person per se, we're beginning to have a problem that already this is a third case that she seems to be losing in the court of law. We're saying in implementing those findings, the president must tread carefully not to come back again some few months later only to find out those findings have been set aside. But it's not about Pravin Gordhan. For all we care, the South Africa will be better off without Pravin Gordhan in cabinet.
All right, so Pravin Gordhan should basically not make it into this particular cabinet. So if I was a fly on that wall of the discussions that were had with Cosatu, as well as the president, the briefing that was had, would you care to share with us perhaps what you know of what will be announced at 8 o'clock? I'm not banking on this, but
the discussions we've been having all along.
Are you satisfied with what?
We're satisfied. Has always been about the kind of the reconfiguration of the state and the departments. Of course, the final decisions rest with the president and those that he govern with. He must be given that part. The discussion we've been having had very little to do, if anything at all, about the names of the people must come into cabinet. That's why, as you correctly put it, the leadership of Cosatu now is locked down there. They are only going to leave that room once the president has announced this cabinet. So nobody knows in terms of the names. That discussion is taking place there as we speak.
But are you satisfied? I know that the two representatives of Cosatu were in this lockdown meeting with the president. Obviously, is Cosatu confident that come this announcement at 8 o'clock, it will have some of what is on your wish list as a Labour Federation? We're satisfied that we are actually at least agreeing on the principles and the framework about the kind of personnel that must form part of in terms of the characters and the skills that they possess, including bringing in new ideas and the youth and the balance of gender. We're satisfied with the kind of energy that these people must bring and the direction with the sixth administration must go. So we're satisfied that whatever the president decides, it will not be far off from the shared perspective and the framework which he must appoint his executive. I want to come to the issue of Didi Mabuza, of course, the postponement that we saw in his subsequent swearing in as a member of parliament. One would then, we've been asking the ANC over the past couple of hours, does this then mean that the Integrity Committee itself has cleared David Mabuza of all that he had to answer to? Given that he's now been sworn in, one could perhaps speculate that the issues that there was a sense of uncomfortableness with have been dealt with. Do you think then he should ascend to be a deputy president of the country? Long before the election campaign started, when the commissions were coming and the allegations against a number of people that are representing the ANC came, what we have been calling for as Cosatu was that anybody who has got a contrary version of what has been perpetuated in the public must either face the commission and present a version that is contrary, or must face the ANC or the Integrity Commission and say, yes, there are these allegations about myself, but this is the version that I have of the issues. What the deputy president of the ANC did was to do exactly that when he was flagged or supposedly flagged by the Integrity Commission, he sought to approach the Integrity Commission to present the contrary versions of what is been alleged about him. As to whether the Integrity Commission has cleared him, but they are satisfied with the presentation. If that they are satisfied, we don't see what is the problem. Our view is that the most important thing that must be commended here
is that at the highest level, at the presidency level, the institutions of the ANC that is supposed to safeguard the integrity and the prestige of the ANC was not undermined. Because what we have been seeing with these names that we have been mentioning, some of them, when they've been alleged to have done something, they will continuously ignore, including ignoring the authority of the very institution they've established called the Integrity Commission. And we are going to be very worried if at the level of the presidents, that institution was not going to be respected. So we commend the president and the deputy president for respecting and leading the way that everybody must be accountable. The sixth administration must be characterized by a principle of accountability and transparency. So we are satisfied. In fact, if I answer your question, we think he must be the deputy president tonight.
He must ascend, says Cosatu. Thank you very much for your time. Okay. Thanks for coming through. The first deputy president of Cosatu.